Good evening and welcome to Jigsaw Connect. Jigsaw Connect is a series of webinars for teachers delivered by Jigsaw, the National Centre for Youth Mental Health, and ESCI, Education Support Centres Ireland. Before we get started, I'll go through a few guidelines. You'll need headphones, earphones, or a quiet space. Please close all other applications running in the background of your computer. If you experience any problems with sound or vision, please check your internet connection. However, if you continue to experience difficulties through the webinar, please contact us on elearning@jigsaw.ie. During the webinar, we would encourage you to ask questions via the control panel. These will be directed to the facilitator and answered at the end of the session. Please note that we cannot hear or see you during the webinar unless you have agreed to become a panellist for the webinar. On your screen, you will see a control panel. You can ask a question at any time through this control panel. After typing your question, press send or the enter key. You can also expand this control panel to full screen mode. At the end of the session, please give us your feedback by answering the post-webinar survey on LearnUpon. Once this survey is completed, you will have completed the course and will receive a certificate to say so. We hope you enjoy the webinar.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I think you can all hear me okay. So welcome to our Jigsaw webinar series for primary school teachers. Give me a few moments here. I'm going to set up on my side. You can all see my screen okay. So I suppose I just want to welcome you all here for our webinar series. And I suppose we're going to just run through a few of the formats for today's webinar. So I'm joined here on a panel by my colleague Erica Lawless, who's a Jigsaw clinician, and I'm also joined by Mary Hawk, who is educational consultant, and also by Mary Dolan, who's a primary school principal from Ballyconnell in County Carlow. So I want to thank everybody here on the panel and thank yourselves for joining us here today. So just to run through the format of today's presentation really that we're going to have is myself and Erica introducing a little bit of context around self-care, and just really setting the stage a little bit for the conversation that we're going to have during the webinar today. Once we do this, we're going to open up to a panel discussion. So we're going to invite our two Marys into our panel discussion just to chat a little bit more about their experiences of self-care at this current time. And lastly, then we're going to have an open Q&A where everybody who has joined the webinar today will have the opportunity to submit some questions for the panel to discuss. But this option is available to you throughout the webinar, so feel free to start submitting your questions from the get-go. And what we'll try to do then is get to as many questions as we can towards the end of the webinar. Any questions that we don't get to today, so just to know we've had quite a big demand for our webinar today. So any questions that we don't get to, we will keep a record of all questions and try to maybe answer those on another platform that we have available to us, maybe our Jigsaw Online platform or another webinar that we'll have throughout this series as well. So feel free to submit as many questions as you can, just so you know. I suppose you will be anonymized, so nobody else can see your questions, only the panel members that are here today, and it'll be anonymized in terms of the discussion today as well. Okay, so I might get started then. And I suppose to start off with something that's quite obvious to us all, but I think it's really important that we all come here today and remember something that's quite obvious to us all, that we are human first. So you've joined the webinar today as a primary school teacher and looking to find out more about self-care. So I think it's important that you acknowledge that yes, you are a teacher, but many of you maybe are parents, many of you are maybe siblings or brothers or sisters, and some of you may be sons or daughters, neighbours, colleagues, friends. And it's really, really important to connect with that element of you being human first before anything else. The experience of COVID-19 and what we're all kind of sharing today is one that's impacting us at a human level above anything else. And that's likely to have an impact on your teacher role. So I just wanted to take a few moments really just to connect with that human element first and foremost, as something that's vitally important for us all here today.
So the importance of self-care, why do we feel the need to promote self-care at this time? Self-care, it's really essential to promote our mental health and well-being. It has a preventative focus, so engaging in self-care practices proactively enhance our mental health by building resilience and preventing problems with our mental health. Here we have the analogy of the oxygen mask. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with the advice that you need to put on your own oxygen mask first before helping another person to put on theirs. And likewise, it's really important that you look after yourself first before being able to support others. And we realise the really important role that teachers have in the lives of young people, in the lives of their students. You have a huge influence on, their development, their learning, their mental health. But we know that you're much more effective in supporting them when you look after yourself first. And I suppose now more than ever during this time of remote working, self-care is really relevant. It's particularly important now to proactively, take steps to look after your well-being. Self-care, it's essential for, giving us the foundations for being able to deal with everyday stressors and challenges. And I suppose I'll get to a little bit more of that later. But yeah, now more than ever, it is really important to look after your self-care.
And I guess just to acknowledge for the teacher audience in particular, the current expectation or the ask of schools and of teachers at the moment is one of high adaptability and flexibility. I suppose overnight schools have transformed their way of working and teachers have had to transform their way of working as well. So just to put a bit of acknowledgement on the strain that is putting on you guys at the moment. I think it's fair to say that you're all operating well and truly out of your comfort zones at the moment. So this really, I suppose, is all the more reason why self-care is so important right now. So to acknowledge that we are being stretched, and I think the teacher and the education context more than anything else at the moment is being massively stretched in terms of kind of the expectations and some of the conversations that are happening in society at the moment. So just to acknowledge that strain and just to emphasize again why self-care is really so important. So what we wanted to do in this webinar was just to briefly introduce you guys to some elements of self-care that we feel are quite important to consider at the moment. So some of you who might have done our self-care workshop, for example, will be familiar with some of our elements of self-care that we would have introduced in that. So what we've done in this webinar series is just extracted some of the key elements that we felt were really quite crucial. The first element that is really, really important is to, I suppose, acknowledge and to be quite self-aware at the moment that the presence of stress really is a normal and valid response to what's going on around us right now. And in that, I suppose it's important to maybe reflect and just to recognize how you yourself maybe respond to the stress that's going on. Our bodies are communicating with us all the time. So it's important to maybe kind of tune into how your body might be communicating with you right now. Are you someone who speeds up quite a lot in response to stress? Are you go mode? Or are you somebody who maybe slows down and maybe wants to shut down a little bit? It all feels maybe a little bit much right now. So maybe just tuning in to kind of what is your own stress response and how is your body maybe communicating with you right now, so you can start to get a sense of what your own needs might be. I suppose I thought it was important to maybe flag that yes, while it's understandable that there's a massive external source of stress right now in the COVID-19 situation, which is, I suppose, placing quite a bit of strain on how we operate, how we function on a day-to-day basis, and placing a lot of additional stressors on that. There's also that additional component of an internal source of stress. And when I mean internal, I mean those that come from our mind, those that come from the internal sources of our thoughts and how we talk to ourselves right now in the context of the situation that we're faced in. So some of the common mind traps that I've heard from colleagues and from friends, I suppose, is, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough story? I should be doing more story. There's a lot of story that our mind generates right now, which can really exacerbate the stress response. So it's about maybe just acknowledging that, yes, there's lots of sources of stress that are out of our control right now, but some of these internal sources of stress may actually be playing quite a lot of havoc on our stress right now at the moment as well, which is really not very helpful. So tuning into kind of what maybe are some of the internal sources of stress that may be going on for you right now. And I will come back to this in a few of our exercises, but I wanted to just introduce one today that I thought would be quite nice for us all to be able to engage in, and even maybe take some time right now to engage in. And it's our dropping anchor exercise. And really the focus of this exercise is to acknowledge that there's so much going on around us right now that we can't control or we have no control over. And it's really kind of pulling us every which way. And it's really important that we have a way to ground ourselves and to stabilize ourselves in the context of what's going on around us. So it's not about trying to change our thoughts or change how we feel or remove anything from our kind of situation that's going on right now. but merely just to stabilize ourselves and to feel that we have more capacity to be able to cope with what's going on around us. And it really is quite a helpful tool for dealing with the difficult thoughts and feelings that can come with these internal sources of stress. So it follows the acronym of ACE, A-C-E. So A really is just about acknowledging the thoughts and the feelings that might be there for you right now. So just acknowledging what's showing up for you, take the stance of a curious scientist. So we're not trying to change the thoughts or the feelings, we're just trying to simply acknowledge what's showing up for you right now. There can be lots of chatter that goes on in our mind. It can be quite silent sometimes, not often. Usually it's more on the busy side. So just acknowledge that, take a few moments, and with that stance of just noticing. Our C then is about coming back into our body. So while we're acknowledging the chatter that's going on right now, taking a few moments just to come back into your body, come back into your physical body that's there. So I suppose while all of this is going on up here, we still have a physical body that we can connect with in lots of different ways. So some of us might want to connect by taking a stretch. Sometimes we can come back into our physical body with taking a breath. Just noticing, I suppose, our position, the chair, our back, I suppose, and our feet and where they're making contact. So whatever kind of strategies work for you just to come back into your body again. So again, acknowledging what's going on and at the same time connecting with our physical body. And E then it stands for engaging in the world around you. So sometimes our mind can pull us off. I always imagine this kind of hook system. Our minds can pull us off into all sorts of stories. And I suppose we know that this happens when we operate quite a lot on autopilot. I know some of us have often maybe even driven somewhere and not remember the journey of getting there because we're just actually engaging in a story in our mind and we're pulled into a different world. We operate in autopilot quite a lot of the time. Sometimes it's quite helpful because it helps us to get things done. Other times it's really unhelpful and it doesn't actually add to our day. It takes away from our day a little bit. So I suppose this ACE acronym of acknowledging the thoughts, coming back into our body, and then engaging in that world around us again, I suppose it's bringing our awareness back to the present moment. So our minds tend to go to the future or go to the past. It's very rarely in the present moment. So this engaging in the world around us is a way to just get present again. So we might do this through just noticing where we are right now. So very strangely, you might be noticing 4 faces on a screen in front of you. You might be noticing, I suppose, other things, some distractions that might be going on in the room around you. There might be some things in your environment, some things you can hear outside of my voice, maybe some things outside. You might be noticing kind of some smells or some sensations that are going on. So I guess engaging in your senses to engage in the world around you is a really good way. With young people, we often talk about, trying to find 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can feel, and taking 1 deep breath. And again, it's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 analogy that can bring us back into the world around us. Often a lot of the tools that we use with our young people, we really can use with ourselves quite a lot. And this certainly dropping anchor exercise is one that I come back to quite a lot. So I just thought I wanted to share with you guys today. So Eric is just going to talk about the second element of self-care here around looking after our foundations.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, the next element of self-care that we feel is really important is looking after the foundations. So we need to look after our foundations in order to build on our capacity to be able to deal with stress by looking after the foundational areas of self-care. So the areas such as sleep, diet and physical activity. Looking at the tree there, I suppose considering the tree, a tree will be much better equipped to weather storms and manage harsh weather conditions if it has strong roots. And with us humans, it's self-care that strengthens our roots when it comes to mental health and well-being. It's inevitable that we will face challenges and stressors and really difficult times from time to time, as we're doing now. But I suppose if we continue to engage in self-care practices, we'll be that bit better equipped to deal with these stressors when we are faced with them. So self-care, it's not the same as stress management. However, it is stressful, it is essential in order to deal with stress. So looking after the foundations, the basic foundations, is really, really important. The next point, do what works for you. So self-care, it's really individual. There are obviously common practices that are common to all humans, such as the sleep and nutrition and physical exercise, and these basic practices are essential, but there are lots of other self-care practices that are really unique to each person. with self-care, be willing to be flexible is important. So I suppose what is self-care one week may not necessarily be self-care the next week. So I suppose that's about being aware and tuning into our bodies, and tuning into what we need. So some weeks, exercise and moving is self-care, whereas other weeks self-care might be just taking a rest. So it's about really tuning in to what your body needs at a given time. Be kind to yourself. So self-compassion is a vital element of self-care for our mind and for our mental health. As Michelle was kind of talking about, that kind of story that we can kind of have in our heads of I'm not doing enough, or I suppose the internal sources of stress that can really impact our mental health. Self-compassion is really important to kind of deal with those thoughts, and kind of fighting against that inner critic, or being aware of that inner critic, and being kind to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I think we use a lot of analogies in our workshops, but certainly I think the storm analogy is coming through quite strong here today, in terms of, I see COVID-19 as that big storm that's going on right now, and we can't stop it, we can't prevent it as such, but we can hang tight and hope for it to pass, and do what we can within that, I suppose, look after ourselves in the process. I suppose the third element of self-care that we extracted from our self-care workshop that we thought was probably really crucial right now, and it's something that we've heard a lot of anecdotes as being a challenging area for quite a lot of people right now, is this area of boundaries. So we talk about the need to recognize and respect your own needs and wishes right now. Like I would have mentioned at the start, some of you are, well, all of you are teachers, but some of you have lots of other roles in your life right now, and that may be impacting upon your capacity to perform in the role of teacher, for example. So maybe to tune in and to recognize and respect that you have your own needs and wishes right now. So if you have, a deep concern for a loved one or a relative who may be facing a challenge right now, that's going to maybe impact on your capacity to be switched on and to be available and to be all the things that you feel you need to be in other roles in your life. So just recognizing and maybe keeping those channels of communication open with your line manager, your principals, if there's certain things that may be impacting upon your capacity to engage in your role right now. And that would feed into kind of having some work schedule considerations. So acknowledging that, some of us may be struggling right now at home to balance maybe competing commitments of having children at home or other responsibilities to attend to right now, on top of the role of kind of trying to set up a homeschool system, and then maybe to provide kind of lessons to students outside of that. So just to acknowledge that your availability may be impacted, and it's about kind of acknowledging what works for you within that, and try to again negotiate something that can work on both sides for that. I think putting clear parameters on your availability is something that's really, really important, and that goes for, I suppose, your communication with parents and with students in terms of when you will be available, in terms of your contactability, and when you will be responding maybe to emails or phone calls that might be coming in, but also maybe to your colleagues as well in terms of the schedule of meetings and when you will be available for those. So making that process quite transparent, and kind of having a boundary on that in terms of where the workday starts and where it ends, and being quite clear on where the workday starts and ends. I know, I suppose, a lot of us have shared anecdotes of that blurred line when we went to the online kind of platform, that suddenly, I suppose, that the workday seemed to be endless, and we're all of a sudden doing a lot more, and I suppose putting a lot more hours into the workday than we had ever been before. So it's about kind of recognizing that the importance of boundaries, that it's really important to have the work-life balance now more than ever. So being clear when it's evening time, we're not checking our emails or our phone calls, we're not responding to things at the weekend, we are available during our working hours, and they're very clear. And again, I suppose for teachers, again, this would have come through anecdotes as well, about the importance of boundarying kind of your personal versus your professional contact information. So just maybe if you are communicating with parents or with students, about having kind of a professional contact link or an email set up, that it's not a personal email account that you are sharing with kind of, I suppose, members of the school community outside of your colleagues. So just acknowledging that it's really, really important to have that boundary on kind of how people can contact you as well when you are performing in the work role. And our final element of self-care then that Erica is going to talk us through is just the one around support.
Yeah, support. It's a really important element of self-care. Seeking and availing of support from others, it is really essential. I suppose we can have lots of personal, individual and effective self-care practices in place, but there will be times when we need social connection or peer support, or, you know, to avail of external supports. Peer support in particular is really valuable. I know teachers often report that the support that they get from their colleagues is the most valuable sometimes to their well-being. Just having a colleague that, you know, can relate to you, knows what you're going through. You know, I suppose you could have difficult encounters maybe in the classroom, or, you know, with certain incidents, and being able to debrief with a colleague in the staff room, maybe at lunchtime, it's really important. Certainly remote working kind of poses difficulties to this. You might not feel that something you're going through kind of means picking up the phone or sending an email. Maybe you feel it's not big enough of a problem to pick up the phone and ring someone, whereas it is much easier when you're kind of going past someone in the corridor or sitting with them at lunch to kind of chat about what's going on. So it is important to try and consider how can you kind of reconnect with your colleagues. So we need to think of alternative ways to kind of foster that connectedness with staff in school. Not being afraid as well to ask for support from colleagues as well is really important. I suppose everybody's adapting to a new way of working, and not everyone will find kind of the technology aspect and doing everything online as easy as other people will. So being able to kind of seek support from, you know, whether it's principal or another teacher that you're teaching with, that's really important. And sometimes, you know, we can be doing all the right things with self-care, but, you know, there are times when we will need external supports as well. So we have supports there, the Employee Assistant and Wellbeing Programme, even, you know, programs like the Jigsaw Connect series. And I suppose even seeking support if there's, you know, difficulties with your students, like availing of NEPS and, you know, of the Education Welfare Service, you know, all these supports are still working and in place. So it is important to avail of them. Now, so that is our, I suppose, initial discussion, and we're going to open up a panel discussion now where we're going to talk to Mary Dolan and Mary Hawke. But I suppose firstly, I just want to remind everyone that you can send in questions. As Michelle said, they're anonymous, so feel free to send in questions and we will try to answer as many as we can. So the first question, Mary Hawke, we have talked about the various elements of self-care. One of those was the importance of boundaries. What do you feel are some of the current challenges and boundaries faced by teachers? And have you any suggestions or recommendations on how to manage these?
Okay, I suppose just from my own background as a primary school teacher myself, I suppose one of the things I'd say about primary teachers in particular is that, you know, it's a very nurturing, caring profession. And I spent years giving support to schools in the whole area of social personal health education and also in wellbeing. One of the difficulties when they're in school settings would always have been the areas of boundaries, you know, trying to help people to realise that there's a professional boundary to what you can do as a teacher. You can't go home with the children, and you can't bring them home with you, even if you want to. And that would have been one of the things, I suppose, it's a natural, like primary teachers tend to be more than, you know, they're nurses, they're mammies, they're psychologists, they're social workers. There's a little bit of everything going on in every school day. And I suppose that's, so from the point of view of, I suppose, being able to accept at the minute that we're in an extraordinary situation at the moment, where this is not the teaching that any of us signed up to originally, and it's not the usual situation. So, you know, I suppose to cut ourselves a little bit of slack and to say, right, there's only so much I can do here, and I can't go home with the children. I might like to. I can't be with them all the time. I can't do the face-to-face engagement I would normally do. So I suppose that's a huge issue for a lot of people. Like, children are missing school and they're missing their friends, but teachers are missing the children as well, and they're missing the buzz and the engagement. And like, teaching is very much about relationships. So, you know, that interpersonal relationship that is between a teacher and their class, it's amazing, and I suppose it's missing. So at the moment, it's about, what can I do in this new situation, extraordinary situation that we find ourselves in? What can I do? And I want to come back to, I suppose, what Michelle said earlier about the mind traps. You know, one of the other things I think is maybe, it might be a generalization, but I think it's fair enough to say, as a profession, we tend to be perfectionists and we want to be the best we can be all the time. And we try to be the best we can be all the time. And I think to give ourselves a little bit, to be kind to ourselves and say, you know, I can be a good teacher at the moment. I can't be maybe the best teacher I'd like to be at this particular minute, but that's okay. And, you know, that whole piece about what can I do and where does my working day start and finish? I have an awful lot of friends and colleagues who are teachers, primary teachers, principal teachers. I have family members. I have my own daughter and son-in-law who are all teachers at the minute. And I suppose what I'm hearing from them is things like, I'm responding to emails late at night. I'm doing things on papers. I don't know whether it's Friday or Saturday. I don't know what day of the week it is, but I know I'm constantly engaging. So I suppose my big urge to people today would be set the boundaries of when you're working and when you're not working. You're not going to be able to, you know, keep the well full and look after yourself and your self-care if you're not saying, you know, the clear delineation between when am I working, when am I not working. Now, I absolutely understand that, you know, for various people, everybody's human, as you said, Michelle, first. Everybody's living in their own home environments at the moment. In some homes, it's very busy. They could be looking after 2 small babies. They could be looking after mammy and, you know, granny could be living with them. There could be people living alone. There could be people, I'm back at the moment. I've gone from living on my own to suddenly having 5 adults again in the house. So there's, you know, you're trying to find the space where you can work. Can I, you know, where's the room I can do it in, and what hours of work actually works for me. So it mightn't be that, you know, a teacher at the moment is saying the best hours for me are between 9 and 2. Maybe the best hours are, you know, slightly different because of their own family needs. But to stick to saying what are those hours and when am I off work? Because I think if you're going to look after your self-care, that's absolutely critical. And make sure you keep your weekends. Your weekends are sacred.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's a lot on boundaries actually, Mary, isn't there? When we actually kind of, I suppose, extract it, it probably is, especially at the current time, probably one of the most important elements of self-care to really, I suppose, spend some time thinking about and to clarify for yourself and to watch out for the guilt traps and you know, like you say, because there's a lot of guilt traps that can get in the way of us actually setting and establishing the most appropriate boundaries that we need for us. So it's really about kind of recognizing what those might be. So I think you summed it up really nice there with that. I suppose over to Mary Dolan. I know another element of self-care we would have talked about was this kind of concept of support, and acknowledging that, you know, support for teachers right now is something that's a bit of a challenge. So I suppose from your own experience, can you share maybe a little bit of kind of maybe some suggestions that you might have about how this element of self-care in terms of support could be fostered for teachers right now?
Okay, well, I suppose I'm a very sociable being, and the best part of my day is meeting the teachers, whether it's in the corridor or in the staff room, and discussing, you know, what's going on and the issues, and finding myself isolated, working from home, which I was never meant to do, and which I assure you, as soon as I go back to school, I'll never do again, I hope. I'm not a homework person. It's very important to stay in touch with your colleagues. So being a principal, I suppose, I try not to overdo the contact with my teachers, because I'm afraid if I am recommending things and suggesting things twice a day, 5 days a week, I'm going to make them feel inadequate or you know, that they're not doing enough or whatever. So we kind of established at the beginning a pattern of work and what we would do, and how the work would go out to the parents. I would send a cover email to my parents once a week explaining what's going out, and that's how I support them. And I've told them if they need me any time of the day, just or night or anything, just, you know, to have my own private number, of course, the staff, and to contact me. And we have our Ruddy Scholar WhatsApp, and we talk to each other on that about sometimes about school things and sometimes about other things too, you know. But I think it's very important that the teachers are there for each other. We're all, like when we're in school, we'll continue that now as a very united staff, you know, and support each other. I suppose if, you know, I feel as principal, we have to lead from the top down. I have to show good example. As Mary Huck stressed there, that I'm sitting, you know, no point asking them to set boundaries if I'm not setting boundaries myself. So I have asked that, you know, when they're emailing parents, that they'd only do it between 9:30 and 3 p.m, a semblance of a school day, and not to even reply to, you know, emails. Wait until the morning and reply to the parental emails then next morning. Whether or not the parent has gone to work or not, you must make it clear that, you know, the teacher's off duty when they're off duty. Otherwise, you'll find yourself slipping into that awful routine where you're day and night doing the same thing. So just back to supporting each other, apart from that, apart from the work aspect, and, you know, passing on information from the department and from the IPPN about sites, how can we support each other? I suppose just to reassure each other that we're all doing an amazing job at the moment. I haven't spoken to one teacher, one principal who doesn't think that we are just brilliant. We're amazing. We never thought we were as good as we were. We're that good. I started my first Zoom meeting last week, and do you know what? I think I'm just out of this world. I'm so good. Always only did PowerPoint presentations for PDSD on child protection and things like that. But now I've started Zooming. I think I'll be Zooming for the rest of my life. But there is nothing like face-to-face contact. Don't really enjoy what I'm even, you know, webinars and things like that. I prefer, you know, speaking to people in a room, face-to-face, nothing like personal contact. But look, it's gone for the moment, so what can we do? We can support each other by having little, maybe, you know, webinar chats or Zoom chats, or whether you're using Teams or whatever your staff have decided to use. So I would say maybe the staff meeting, I would like to limit it to once a week, you know, or my board of managers meeting once a fortnight or whatever. That's the formal stuff, get it out of the way, what we're doing, what's the plan for next week, everything okay, any big issues or children or parents not engaging or whatever. And then I think we haven't started this yet, but I'm going to suggest to my staff that we have one meeting a week, probably through Zoom, since it's the only thing I can use anyway, that where we would have kind of a social gathering. So we can't meet face to face. We can't go to Delish and Tinahely. It's where we usually go for our coffee, or the farm shop, if anybody knows it, or Rathwood or whatever. So what do we do now? So maybe we have our cup of coffee at 4 o'clock on a Friday evening or something. 3 o'clock might be too close or whatever. They're still tying up odds and ends. So maybe 4 p.m. whatever suits everybody. And I will be suggesting to my, you know, teachers that it's not me hosting it, because then it's very easy to slip back into the principal mode again and control the situation or whatever. So let one of the other teachers do it and talk about what's bothering us. You know, 1 or 2 of our teachers might have cancelled their weddings during the summer because of what's happening. You know, the confirmations, the communions, have we seen the children out and about, and, you know, on their bicycles or whatever, and funny things, anecdotal, what we usually talk about when we're having a cup of coffee, and how we are, I suppose, really to touch base, how we actually are coping in this, what is, we can call it what we like, but it's a crisis in the country, you know. Some of us, I'm sure some of the teachers who are linking in with us today here have families of their own, young children, teenagers, probably people doing the Leaving Cert, how that's affecting them versus me, that are really three grown-up adults here in the house as well as myself. So we have our, you know, that brings its own issues as well, I can assure you. But just to be nice to each other, to be kind to each other, to reassure each other. And I can't stress enough how I think amazing the teachers are at the moment. The amazing job we took on between 2 and 3 in a Thursday evening. We're told school's closing, and we're out there, and we're home now, and we're managing from home. And look, even if you're not using every available website, if you're not all on Seesaws, you're not all on this, you're not all scanning in, or you're not all using whatever, you know, what am I trying to say here? You know, all the technology, whatever you're doing is enough. You know, everybody's, even my 7th class teachers, they're not all, I deliberately didn't send each teacher's work. I didn't put it up there in public so for all the teachers to see that, because I know 1 or 2 get nervous who aren't doing enough. And what they're doing is brilliant on a different platform, using different ways of communication, and they're all sending different cover emails to the parents and the little messages and reassurances. And just as the parents need to be reassured and the children need to be reassured, we need to reassure ourselves that we are quite simply amazing at the moment. But if you know, we can't all be up all the time, and if we're feeling stressed, and there are days and mornings when I get up and I see what's ahead of me, this admissions policy, admissions statement, special needs policy, I need a new prefab for my second ASD class, and the architect says there's no space there now, Mary, at the moment. And if I let all that stress me, and it does at times, you know, I could be on my 50th cup of coffee by 6 p.m. What I'm saying is, there are people you can talk to apart from your, you know, your peers in the class, in the staff room. If you can't talk to them, or you feel, I mean, we put up a slide with Inspire Workplace. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We're previously called Care Call. And there are people at the end of that phone, professionals, who will speak to you about your issues in a private, you know, capacity. And I haven't used them, but I've heard they're amazing. And if you really need to put in a call to your GP or something, because this is, you know, unusual times and we're feeling bothered, we can't sleep, please do look after yourself. Because if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after the children in the school, you can't relate to the parents, you feel, you know, the pressure will only mount on yourself. A certain amount of stress can be helped by talking and laughing and having a chat, but there does come a point when you may need to seek professional help here because of this unusual situation, and don't feel ashamed or don't feel bothered. That's what everybody's there for.
Well, exactly,
Again,
Mary, like you would have
how
mentioned.
wonderful everybody is. The teachers of the country, whether it's in primary schools or secondary schools, I think are just doing an amazing job at the moment, and please God, it will be acknowledged.
That's it. I think we can't say that enough, really. It's just to acknowledge the amazing work teachers are doing at the moment. I think like you've summed it up really nicely there as well, is that support can come in lots of different shapes and forms. Sometimes it's the practical support, it's the teaching specific support that you might want to engage with your colleagues on. But sometimes it's not about the teaching role, it's about how are you getting on, and tuning in with that kind of side of things as well. And I suppose in the spirit of being role models for the young people that we might be working with, I suppose working for Jigsaw, where we're encouraging young people to seek help, to talk about what might be going on for them. Actually, yeah, we need to be that role model for the young people by seeking help when we need it as well. So to acknowledge that that's okay to do, and it's perfectly okay to seek help, and especially in the current context, we forgive anybody for seeking help right now and seeking some support in whatever form that might be, in a formal capacity or informal capacity, and whatever platform you want to use for that. So it's about being aware of what is available and then feeling that you can actually seek support when you need it as well. But I think, like you mentioned, there's lots of examples that teachers are kind of sharing right now, and it probably took a bit of time to maybe get into the swing of support and how to support one another, because we were so used to a different way of working and a different way of supporting one another that it took a bit of adjustment. But certainly there was a big miss and a big missing of that kind of, I suppose, peer-to-peer contact that colleagues had with one another. So I think teachers are using different platforms right now, maybe to connect with one another, and to maybe, like you mentioned, kind of your plans to build in maybe a social element to your weekly kind of, I suppose, work week with colleagues is something that's really important as well. So just noting here now, we still don't have any questions from anybody right now, so feel free just to get your questions in, and we will get to them by the end of the webinar as well.
Yeah, some really great tips there on support. Thanks, Mary. And it sounds like a really, really important element is connection and just staying connected with your colleagues. So thanks for that. I have another question here as well for Mary Hawk, if you don't mind answering, just about balance. So one of the challenges of engaging in self-care, particularly in the current situation, is time and being able to manage self-care along with all the other roles being juggled, so workload and home life. Do you have any suggestions for teachers who might be struggling to find time for self-care at the moment, and I suppose how to balance it alongside all the other roles?
I suppose it's about, you know, again, there's no magic bullet here, because as we said already, you know, we're all operating from our own homes. So, you know, in the past, as somebody said to me recently, they'd have had the childminder who could have looked after their children. So they could have got out for their yoga class, or they could have gone for their walk, or they could have done, and they were very good at being able to timetable, this is my little bit of time for me after school before I go home and start the, you know, the whole all my duties and my chores at home and being a mammy and being everything else in the house. Now people are in the house, they're looking at the washing piling up, the ironing, they're looking at the house that has to be cleaned, they're looking at the children who have to be bathed and read stories to and homeschooled, as well as trying to do their own work. So it's almost like, and of course there's no, you know, the supports that were there in the form of childminders or grannies or anything else aren't there at the minute. So it's much harder for people in certain home environments, depending on your own personal circumstances, to find that time for your self-care. But I suppose what I'd urge people to do, like Erica, you mentioned it, I think be flexible. Be really flexible, and maybe just think at the minute, maybe what you used to do to, you know, maybe it was your physical activity, your yoga class, your Pilates class, whatever it was, or you're going out for your walk, that was your form of self-care. Well, maybe now, maybe you can't access that at the moment, or maybe it's not what you need at the minute. Maybe it's something very different at the minute. Maybe you just need a few minutes to yourself. Maybe you just need a little bit of quiet time. I know the challenge for myself. One of my wonderful ways of self-care I always had was my walk out in Strand Hill beside the sea. I loved it. Now, unfortunately, it's outside my 2 kilometres, so I can't go to the sea. I can't hear the waves. I can't walk by the sea. So I've substituted that now for my garden and my birds. And I have put up a few bird feeders, and every morning I grab my few minutes to myself before everybody else kind of gets busy, and I just sit and watch and listen to the bird song, and it's working, and I'm loving it. So it's just a different way of engaging what you mentioned there in our lovely exercise, Michelle, about, you know, the chatter. I'm desperate for that. I have such an amount of chatter going on in my head all the time, as all my own family and friends will tell you. I'm desperate for that sort of stuff. I'm always thinking ahead of time, and it's wonderful for bringing me back in to the moment and to say, no, hang on a minute now, just listen to what's going on around you and look at what's going on around you before the chatter takes over. And before I start, oh, I must do this and I must do that, and I haven't done this and I haven't done that, it's a great way of doing it. So I suppose, coming back to your question, Erica, what can you do? I would say what you need to do is, first of all, become aware. Okay, so ask yourself the question, even after this webinar, have I been doing anything to look after myself at the minute? Or am I so swamped in caring for the people around me at home and in caring for the children in the school that I actually, you know, am I zoomed out of it? You mentioned Zoom, Mary. I had talked to somebody yesterday who said to me, oh my God, I have 4 Zoom meetings today. I don't ever want to go near Zoom again. You know, there is that at the moment, you know, like all of the educational companies have been fantastic and they've made all the resources free, but honest to goodness, people are being swamped. There's nearly too much going on. There's nearly too much coming at them, between circulars from the department, between, you know, all sorts of WhatsApp groups, clicking, pinging all the time. I suppose a piece of advice I'd give to everybody is switch off the notifications on your phone for at least an hour a day. Switch off the notifications. Go away, step away from the laptop or the iPad or whatever you're using, step away from the screen and put it out of the room. You know, go out, you either leave the room where that screen is or shut it down and make sure it's not close to you, and just be selfish. And I mean that in the best possible way. Think about self for a few minutes, because it's coming back to what you said, Erica. If we don't care for ourselves first, this is not selfish in the, I suppose, I grew up at a time when you were warned, don't be selfish, don't be selfish. You know, you can't think of yourself. What we want people to do now is actually do think of yourself for a few minutes. Think about, are you actually managing to do anything for yourself at the minute? Okay, just for yourself. Not because you think you have to, not because you think, oh, somebody expects me to do this. Are you actually looking after yourself? And is that just taking a few minutes on your own, whatever works for you at the moment, that's what you need to do. And you need to do it consistently. So that would be my other message to people. Practice it every day. Whatever is working, make sure you do it every day. And make sure, in the same way as you're making sure that you're clicking into your emails and you're clicking into your Zoom meetings and your staff meetings, just make sure that you're doing something for yourself every day as well. And that's really important.
Yeah, definitely, Mary. I think you touched on something really important there, that don't let self-care become another should or must do on the to-do list. You know, I think it's important that we can get a bit overwhelmed with all the things that we feel like we should be doing right now. So it is about finding what works for you in that. And like you say, maybe have to make some adjustments to things that you would have had access to before or would have had a different impact before to kind of what's happening right now as well. Definitely. We just had a question come in here now, and I suppose between yourself, Mary Dolan and Mary Hawk, I'm just wondering about some advice for this question. It's how to communicate to a principal who maybe is placing quite a lot of demands on teachers at the moment. So this teacher just given an example that they've been asked to maybe update whole school plans as well as their term plans, assigning work, giving feedback, engaging with parents, hosting Zoom meetings for our classes and weekly Zooms for staff as well. So there seems to be a lot on the workload, and there seems to be a lot of demands kind of coming in. I'm just looking for some advice about how to communicate maybe some of those, I suppose, concerns or the challenges that they're being experienced back to the principal.
I suppose my message to them would be to communicate. That would be the first thing, right? Not to be afraid to say it, because again, I suppose one of the big things for people at the moment is it's very easy to send out an email or to send out something with suggestions in it, but suddenly the suggestions, I think Mary Dolan, you said it earlier, suddenly the suggestions maybe seem like, oh, I have to do everything here, you know, and maybe to just, you know, not assume that your principal understands or knows what your own personal circumstances are in your own home. So maybe to be very honest and just say, look, you know, I have all of these other things going on for me. I mean, we have to remember that there are teachers around the country, like everyone else, who are actually bereaved at the moment, who, because of this awful crisis in the country, you know, I myself today had to take part in a family funeral this morning. So, you know, people are doing that as well. You know, there are unfortunately the awful victims of this, you know, COVID-19. People are being touched by huge grief, and bereavement is going on as well for people, as well as worry, as well as anxiety about older family members, your grandchildren you can't see. All of these things are consuming people, and then they're maybe trying to, as we said already, homeschool their own children as well, maybe concerned about their partner who might be working in the front line. There's all sorts of things going on for people at the moment. And, you know, we can't assume that a principal knows that. So maybe just have a conversation, pick up the phone and have a chat and say, look, I'm not able to do this at the minute. I can do X, Y, and Z, but I'm not going to get to do this and this. And I think that would be my recommendation. Have that conversation and just explain, you know, why at the moment you feel that you're a little bit overwhelmed by the amount that's coming, and, you know, you need to draw a boundary. And I think that's really important. Mary Dolan might have a suggestion.
Yeah, I'll just add a few little things there. Specifically on the planning, you were asked to do your planning and fortnightly notes and everything else. So what we're doing is, and I know you're not the principal person asking the question, what we're doing is, so I've asked them, you know, whatever they're sending the parents, I'm filing that away. And I've told in a conversation with my kicker actually that is our fortnightly planning, that my teacher's fortnightly planning I stand over. So they're asked to do nothing else these fortnights. What's the point in making a plans or going to miss out at the moment? Idealistically, you know, they're making the practical one. So their fortnightly notes at the moment is the work they're sending out to the parents. So it's weekly actually. We don't have fortnightly. And that's filed away in a little file on my desktop that says planning. So that's our planning now while the school is closed. It'll also be the Countess Masool. It'll also be printed off the teachers' plans, and they will format the Countess Masool out of those. The teachers have enough to be doing now at the moment besides writing plans that are surplus requirement. Okay, on policies, yes, policies have to be updated at all times of the school year, and at the moment the principals and boards of management are working on admissions policy. I'm not inclined, that's me, to ask my staff to get involved in changing policies at the moment, for the simple, well, I don't know, I suppose the size of the school where the question is coming from. We have a 12 teacher school. I think they have enough on the moment. The ACN teachers and my ASD teachers, my 7th class teachers have plenty on their plate at the moment besides asking to review policies. So I'm trying to work on policies myself and my deputy principal, who also happens to be a teacher, class teacher, and who's also a parent homeschooling 3 children. But between us, we're doing a little bit on policies. We're not killing ourselves either. There's plenty of other work to be done. I just feel that that's just me that asking the class teachers or the special ed teachers at the moment to get involved in producing policies, reviewing policies. I'm just stressing them out a little bit too much. But if it's you that's being asked and you don't know how to handle this, I suggest, as Mary Hawke said, have a very honest conversation with the principal that you're finding it you're just about managing to get your plans ready for the parents, that maybe they in our school they're emailing back or scanning back some of the work is being corrected and commented on to the parents, so we're learning support users. And I feel if they're coping with that between 9 and 3 Monday to Friday, I'm just not inclined to ask them to do any more. So maybe they could suggest to the principal, maybe could we leave the policy reviews maybe for the moment and just concentrate on maybe the work with the parents and seeing how it's going and the platforms. I mean, just because we're at home and we're sending the work out once a week, I don't think that the teachers are doing nothing in between. They're preparing the work that has to go out again, and they're looking up stuff and they're reviewing and putting their plan together, so that they don't have to be doing it on Saturday and Sunday. So, but if you are asked and the principal is insisting, I suppose just if you put it all, just do a little bit of review and fire back something. I wouldn't be over stressing myself about it. If they're not taking no from an answer, I'd just be doing the little bit I could on policy and getting it back in there to them. And the gentle little nudge that you feel yourself under pressure, trying to do policy reviews as well as planning, as well as getting work out to the parents, and that maybe could we have a little consensus as a staff that maybe we'd ease off of that.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, I suppose if this is one teacher that may be feeling this, it's highly likely that there's a number of teachers that are feeling this as well. I think some of our fears sometimes around maybe being open or being honest about our communication is, that fear of what if they think I'm not working hard enough, or I'm looking for an excuse, and that's not the case. And if you're struggling with something, it's highly likely that there's a lot of other people in the exact same boat, and it's just waiting for someone to please advocate on our behalf. So to maybe, like you say, as a collective group, if maybe having that approach of open communication as an individual is tough, maybe as a collective group and talking about how to bring this conversation as a staff group to the principal at the time. But like you say, I think open communication seems to be kind of the shared consensus really around and naming the challenges that are being faced as a collective group. And definitely.
Thank you. I have another question in here from a teacher. Any ideas of activities to break the day up and change my mood? Feeling stressed in my personal life, relationships also, and struggling with it all. Okay, yeah, I'm sure there are lots of people at the moment, I suppose, just struggling with it all. I suppose in relation to the first part, kind of ideas of activities to break up the day and change your mood, sometimes I think it's nice to sit down and try and come up with a menu of what we'd often call nourishing activities, like try to come up with maybe between 10 and 20. That can seem a lot, but they can be really small things. I'm trying to come up with between 10 or 20 activities and trying to make it a mix of things that are relaxing, things that are enjoyable, things that are social, things that are to do completely by yourself. And sometimes when you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed or just don't really know what to do, kind of having a menu of nourishing activities can be helpful. So things that, make you feel calm, centered, make you feel energized. So sometimes having a list there like that can be helpful. I suppose in relation to feeling stressed at the moment, firstly, acknowledge that, it is okay to feel overwhelmed and stressed given the current circumstances. Sometimes just to take a step back, take a deep breath, and as Michelle was talking about earlier, I suppose tuning into yourself and getting some awareness, kind of asking yourself, okay, what thoughts am I having right now? What physical feelings am I having right now? Sometimes a pen and a paper can give some release. So jotting down your thoughts and feelings and asking yourself, okay, is this something I have control over, or is this something I have no control over? If it's something that you have a little bit of control over, maybe sometimes jotting down a couple of different possible actions you can take or possible things you can do. It doesn't have to solve the problem, but it can be just doing something, and jotting down different ideas. Sometimes we can ruminate a lot in our heads and thoughts can go around and around, and it can leave us kind of awake at night and lead us thinking. Sometimes I find if you write them down, it can kind of almost get it out of your head and onto paper, and it can help you kind of problem solve. If it's something that you have no control over, then that's when you can kind of allow yourself to be stressed or upset about this thing that's happening that we don't have control over, and know that it's okay to feel a bit stressed about that, and maybe looking into some mindfulness activities, deep breathing. I know on Jigsaw Online there's some ideas of mindfulness techniques like progressive relaxation techniques, deep breathing, different grounding techniques, and there's different apps as well that you can look at, like Headspace and Calm, and as I said on Jigsaw Online there's a little bit more on that. I'm not sure if any of you have any more on that, kind of ideas to break the day and change mood and feeling stressed.
I think just something to come in on is, I think we can put a bit of pressure on ourselves maybe to feel a certain way, and sometimes it's just about acknowledging that I'm feeling what I'm feeling right now, and I suppose sometimes we go into battles with our mind, I shouldn't feel this, and a bit of comparative suffering, sure, haven't they got it worse, and so who am I to be complaining? So just watching out, I suppose, for how we might be treating ourselves right now. I suppose we go back to basics about changing our mood and impacting our mood. Sometimes we're just not able to go there with the battle. I suppose it's too much chatter going on. So sometimes it's about connecting maybe with our physical self and try to support our mood through our physical self. And I suppose physical activity is one of those things that we we all know has a huge impact on our mood. Sometimes we don't feel like going for that walk or getting out for that bit of fresh air, but we always come back and go, God, if only I could, bottle this feeling that I have, because it's actually great. I always feel better afterwards. So sometimes it's not about waiting to feel like doing something. It's about just connecting with, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get out for fresh air. Maybe I'm not going to go for the 5K run. I'm literally going to go for, a 1K stroll. Or maybe I'm not even going to put a measurement on it. I'm just going to get outside for a few moments. I'm going to see where the day takes me. So kind of taking the pressure off maybe what you're trying to do, that we're not trying to force or struggle with our mood. It is what it is, but maybe connecting with our physical self. So physical activity, I suppose, is different for everybody. But I know for me anyway, it's something that I would recommend quite a lot. It's one of the key ways, because we're connecting in with our physical self, and it has that automatic impact on our mood of kind of fresh air, connecting with nature and connecting with the world around us through our bodies is a really vital way that we can just shake up that mood, especially when we're feeling that bit stuck and maybe we're getting caught in that challenge or that battle that's going on internally. I don't know if Mary and Dolan or Mary Hawk, you have any kind of, I suppose, suggestions for yourselves about things that you do to maybe boost your mood or to change your mood when you're feeling that bit stuck.
Yeah, what works for me, I suppose, is getting out in the evening for a walk. I like that. Wasn't always into it, but I find out lately I do it. And I, like you said, Michelle, I sometimes it's the last thing I want to do is stick my runners on, but I feel I pounded out the road my frustration, whether it's with something I saw in an email, or whether it's something I know I have to do tomorrow and I'm putting off belong to school, or an email I need to answer, or a phone call I need to make, a difficult one. I don't want to do it. I pounded out on the road, pounded out to the woods, and I come back and I feel that bit better. And it doesn't come naturally to me to exercise, I assure you, but it do. The other thing I've gone back into is reading. I'm reading Margaret Atwood, The Testaments at the moment, to follow up to The Handmaid's Tale. Sort of slightly depressing material, but it works for me, books sometimes. An odd film on Netflix with the family. I'm an Emmerdale addict. I have to see my Emmerdale, so I'm on 2 or 3 times a week at the moment. It's killing me. And just little things like that. But there are things I'm looking forward to from the time I get up in the morning to read another few chapters of my book, to go for a walk this evening from 5 to 6 or whatever, and to read a chapter or two, to see something maybe on Netflix, a glass of wine 2 or 3 times a week or whatever. But they're my little pleasures. And like, I suppose I do feel, I won't say depressed, but I do get bothered and upset about the fact that I can't go to a coffee shop and meet my friends, that I can't go, being told I can't go places all of a sudden I want to go. So, and this does bother me, and sometimes the walls close in on me a bit, and I have a lot of schoolwork to do, and it's maybe, especially we've been so blessed with the weather. But if on a wet day I find I'm, and I can't get outside or something, and now I can't go anywhere, and I can't go to the shops, and I can't be seen in the supermarket 3 times this week, and I can't be whatever, it kind of does drag me down. So very important to get out, get walking, get running, whatever your whatever your poison is, as they say. Have a nice glass of wine at night time, say, I'm switching off 5 o'clock and going up, I have a quick shower and go for my walk, for a quick shower. I'm going to sit down, get into my pajamas, watch telly or whatever. Easy for me. I don't have young children, I know. But for the person putting the question about being stressed in relationships, you do need to have a little minute for yourself, take time away from the 4 walls of the house, even though we're supposed to be staying within the 2-kilometre zone. Yeah, I find that I do need to get away, get outside the 4 walls of the house, get out, leave the car, just go walk, just go listen to the birds singing, get out into nature, watch the deer, lots around me, cows calving, everything, all that sort of stuff. It kind of just grounds me a little bit. I think if you go to bed at night after working and had no outlet, next day it's not going to be any better.
Yeah.
But I was going to say there was the walking is definitely, I suppose, again, would be my favourite pastime, would be to go out for a walk. And like Mary said there, I'd always feel better. Sometimes what I also do though is, if the weather here in the west of Ireland, we don't get sometimes as nice weather as you might down in in the sunny southeast, but we get I find dance, stick on the music and dance around the kitchen. Mamma Mia is a great one to lift the mood. So anything like that, I suppose. And again, I feel it's something that even when you have young children, around you or whatever, they'll dance as well. And, it's a bit of fun as well as getting those endorphins. And I think, Michelle, you hit it on the head. Like, definitely, if you can, even when you're feeling really sad and low, and if you can try and encourage yourself to do the opposite of what you feel like doing, which might be curling up in a ball and doing absolutely nothing. If you can try and encourage yourself to do something physical, and get those endorphins moving, definitely I feel a lot better afterwards. It's amazing though, I've also discovered a love of jigsaws again now in the last few weeks. We invested in a number of very big jigsaws, and it has become a kind of a project for us. So we've completed a 2,000 piece jigsaw, and there's a 1,000 piece one waiting to be done at the moment. And again, it's a kind of it's a varying, but when you don't want to be noisy and physical, but you want to just sit down and be quiet for a little while. And again, I find it works. It's great. It kind of takes you out of that mind, it takes you out of the chatter again, because you're not focusing on what's going on in your head. You're focusing on something different, so again, it's another thing that I found useful. And the other thing that I found really useful, because I have to say again, I would find, there are days where the sadness of what's happening around us really impacts on me. And I just feel very, very sad. There are some days where I think, oh my goodness, there's so much pain and suffering out there at the minute. It's just horrendous, and when you hear these numbers and statistics coming at you. So about 4 weeks ago, I'd say, I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard someone say, maybe have a Novit day. So don't listen to and I've started doing that. I've started kind of, I suppose, watching what triggers my low mood. What is it? Have I just been maybe listening too much to the news and I got into a kind of a bad habit of having it on a lot, and has it really just sunk in there a bit too much? So now actively switching it off and giving myself a break from it as well, and saying, what, today I'm not going to be listening to it, or I'm only going to listen to one news bulletin. I'm not going to be listening to 10 news bulletins going over and over and over. So I think sometimes we need to just maybe look at what's triggering how we're feeling as well, and see can we do something about that as well, because we can't change. There are external factors that we have no control over at the minute, but I think it's really important, Michelle, what you said earlier on. There are also internal stressors that we can actually have some control over and we can do something about. So it's maybe being aware of what they might be, seeing what works, what can we do. And another, just a very little simple one that we did here, I've kind of said once a week we're dressing up for dinner. So we're making that effort. We can't go out, but we're going to do it in the house. So again, just something to kind of, it lifts the mood, and just might be another thing that somebody can try out.
Yeah, it takes away that Groundhog Day feeling, isn't it? Having those little simple strategies. I think Erica has one last question. Do you, Erica?
I have, and it actually kind of relates to what we have been talking about, but I think it's still important to touch on. Just a question about lack of motivation and feeling tired all the time. Any tips or suggestions on how to motivate oneself to take up physical activity, etc., when you do feel tired? I think with this one, again, kind of tuning into your body and trying to figure out what you need. So tune into, are you physically tired? Do you need rest? Are you getting sleep? So firstly, you might feel that, everyone is out now walking and being physical and being so productive with this time. I suppose firstly checking in with yourself and checking in with why you're feeling tired, and maybe looking at that first. And, maybe you do need to rest. Maybe you do need to look at your kind of routine. I suppose this whole change of routine and working from home is so difficult to kind of adapt to. It's different to what we're used to. So it can kind of throw off our sleep. So looking at that first. And I suppose if it is that, you are getting adequate rest and you are sleeping, but you're still finding it really difficult to motivate yourself. Sometimes looking at self-care, looking at it as kind of what you need as opposed to what you want. Sometimes it's tuning into what does your body and mind need right now. For example, you might want to set your alarm, 15 minutes or 30 minutes earlier to go for a quick walk, and you might wake up and think, oh, I really don't want to do that. I prefer to stay in bed. But kind of then tuning in, thinking, okay, what do I actually need? I want to stay in bed, but I think actually I could do with going for a walk. And sometimes making that differentiation between what you need and what you want. And sometimes you might need movement, and reflecting on how you feel afterwards. It can kind of motivate yourself to go the next time. So if you do, and you know, start small, as Mary was saying, you don't need to go for that 5K run. You know, start small, even if it's starting with a 10-minute walk and just reflecting on how you feel after that. Sometimes that can help motivate for the next time. Michelle or Mary, have you any tips there?
I think motivation is a real tough one. It's definitely a real tough one. And I suppose when we think about motivation and what motivates us, we have to tune into, why is this something that's important to me? And tuning into the why behind the activity that you're trying to motivate yourself to do. So if that is to get out for a walk, why is this important to me? And if it is because I value my health, or I value how I feel, or I value my mood, or you know, things like that, I suppose tuning into why it is important to you, what it gives you in terms of your value system, and I suppose the context of why this is something that is important to you. So tuning into that first. If it's not something that's connected with a value or something that's important, and it's just another to-do list item, you're probably not going to be that motivated to do it. Try to tune into the why behind it. And like you would have touched on there, Erica, as well, as was a big part of motivation, is setting that just right challenge for yourself, so that it's not, okay, maybe the 5K that you were acing there pre-COVID, if we can even remember that time, you know, but actually it's about maybe adjusting that, going, okay, yeah, I want to motivate myself to go out for a run, but right now actually 5K is too much. I'm going to motivate myself to go out for 10 minutes. And I'm going to be glad that I did that. And I'm going to reward myself for doing that, in terms of that kind of pat on the back that I give myself. Not that, sure, you should have done more approach that we probably kick ourselves with, but well done for doing that. You really didn't feel like it, and you did it anyway. So acknowledging the achievements, however small they are, I suppose I always talk about towards moves and away moves. Are we moving towards the kind of person we're trying to be and the kind of things that we want to do with our lives? Or are we moving away? And it doesn't matter how small those steps are. If it's in that direction, that's great. And right now it's about finding those small steps that keep you on that feeling of, I'm moving towards, I suppose, the kind of things that I want to do. So sometimes motivation, a huge barrier, is because the bar is just too high. So we really, I suppose, set ourselves up for a failure, I suppose, if we put that bar far too high based on our resources and our capacity at the moment. So I acknowledge right now we're going to need a bit of adjustment in terms of our expectations, and that's okay. But actually, what little small steps can I take towards that? If this was the end goal, what would be the start? And maybe it is that today I find my runners and I dust them off, and that's enough for today. My intention was I was going to put them on, but I got them out of the wardrobe, and that's the start. It's still moving in that direction. So it's by finding those small little challenges that you can actually move towards that direction. I suppose for me, when we talk about motivation, I just talk about towards moves and breaking it right down and building yourself then towards that. So I think you touched on that, and I think we've all kind of touched on that in those conversations there. I don't know, does Mary, Dolan or Hawk want to add anything to motivation, or are you happy enough?
I think just be kind to yourself. Well, you know, I think what you said there, Michelle, little steps, little, you know, and stay away from maybe comparing yourself to others. You know, I think there's an awful lot at the minute about people that are doing wonderful things, you know, while they're you know, while they're finding themselves in lockdown. But I think sometimes that can be nearly, you know, overwhelming again for others, that others might think, oh my God, would you look at what they're doing and I'm not doing anything, you know. So I think just be kind to yourself, listen to yourself, you know, again, acknowledge how you're feeling, acknowledge this is hard, this is tough, I'm finding this really tough, and then do the little bit. If you can't get out for the hour-long walk, go out for 5 minutes and then see, yeah, I did feel better, and then give yourself a pat on the back and say, you know what, now I did it. You know, just take small steps.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's such a lovely note to leave it on, Mary, as well. Is that kind of idea of kindness and being kind to ourselves, and how important that is right now. You know, if we can actually be a bit more kind to ourselves and to share that collective kindness as well. I suppose you've all come here today, I suppose, because self-care was something that you recognised as being important to you. So about maybe taking some of that home as a key message, hopefully, that you can carry through and sprinkle maybe throughout your days, of kind of idea of being kind to yourself, because you do deserve it. As Mary Dolan said, you're doing a fantastic job of what you're doing right now, and what you're doing is enough right now, and just to feel that reassurance from us and from everybody around you as well, that can all recognise that. So we've gone a bit over time. My timekeeping wasn't great today, but I really loved the discussions, and I just want to thank Mary Dolan and Mary Hawk in particular for your time in kind of joining us on this panel. Again, as panel members for ourselves at Jigsaw Clinicians, it's so great to have people working in the education context with that real life experience that can really add to the conversation that we have here as Jigsaw Clinicians, and can provide that platform for the teachers who have joined us today. So thanks everyone else for joining us. I suppose there will be a recording of this webinar put up onto our Jigsaw online platform. So just if it's something that you do want to share with your colleagues, and just to note that that will be coming up in the next couple of days, just to keep an eye out. And we obviously will have 2 more Jigsaw Connect webinar series coming up over the next 2 weeks. So you will get an email about those like you did for this webinar today. So just on that note, I suppose, thanks everybody, and go and have a lovely evening for yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks
thank
very
you.
much, everyone.
Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
All right.